Hello and welcome to the AnsweRED podcast. As always, my name is Paweł Burza, and as always, of course, I'm joined by Sebastian Kalemba.
Hi, Sebastian Kalemba, the game director for New Witcher Saga.
Amazing, amazing. We have an incredible episode today, Sebastian. Who do we have?
Dude, it's going to be a mind-blow experience in my opinion, because we are having a Boston representatives, executive producer Dan Hernberg, and of course Paweł Sasko.
Everybody knows him.
Everybody knows him. Associate game director.
Yeah, it's going to be everything about the NA studio that we're building in Boston. I can't wait for this discussion because it's amazing. Hope you guys enjoy it. Let's roll. All right, guys, welcome to the studio. It's awesome to have you here all the way from across the big pond. Can you introduce yourselves like briefly before we get into the questions and tell us a little sneak peek about the NA studio?
Sure. I'm Dan Hernberg. I'm the executive producer on the Orion project, which is based in Boston.
Yes. And my name is Paweł Sasko. I'm an associate game director, now in Boston as well. And I've been here for a bit. Into the project.
Yeah, I've only been here 6 months. Sasko's been here like 12 years. So, it's a slight distance in how long we've been here.
But, he's awesome though. So, and I'm not.
I think you're both awesome. That's why we
you.
have you here. And I wanted to start with something very basic because not everybody might know what we're doing with our NA expansion. Everybody knows CDPR being from Poland. We have multiple studios here. We've already had some studios that we've been collaborating with, Molasses Flood, which is part of CDPR. They're also based in Vancouver. And we have all these studios, but now we're setting up something totally new in Boston. And you guys are setting that up for Orion, which we won't really talk much about. So don't worry, won't be spoiling anything. You're
gonna see.
Yeah.
Exactly.
We'll edit that out later. Yeah.
So what's with this whole idea to moving? For me, it's moving Cyberpunk to the US, which makes sense because it's Cyberpunk. But tell me more about the whole experience and what's going on there.
Yeah, I think Cyberpunk is obviously a uniquely American story. Yeah. And so it's got a lot of punk energy, and it was written by an American, so it just seems right to do it in America. But obviously there's been this long road, which I wasn't a part of, so I can brag on the team, of kind of resurrecting Cyberpunk and then bringing Phantom Liberty. And so that was led by Gabe and Sasko and all the directors that we have now on Project Orion. So after Cyberpunk and Phantom Liberty launched, then there was kind of this idea, what if we moved it to America? And we moved the core of the team to America. So we moved all the directors and Gabe and Sasko. And then really the idea is there's a huge talent pool in North America that, for a lot of reasons, people don't necessarily want to move to Europe or, move to Poland. I mean, I love it here. This is my third or fourth time already, even though I've worked with the company for 6 months. But we just thought it'd be a great way to get access to more talent and to try something unique and different. And I think it also helps push CDPR towards more of a global company to have multiple different hubs across the world.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because when we are hiring, actually together with Dan, when we get a CV here in Europe, in most cases it's when someone is super experienced, is maybe around 20 years. That's kind of where the border is. In America, it immediately goes into 35. And when you have those most experienced devs, because the game dev there is one generation older. And you can see it, there are people that started making games when I was born, right?
That's crazy. I can't even imagine, 45 years of experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane.
Bro, I wasn't even in my diapers.
Yeah, this is insane. But guys, I also remember time, following on Burza's question, I remember the beginnings of Cyberpunk, and it was really tough for us, Polish people, right, here, understanding this culture. And we had several trips to States, we've been taking pictures, we've been trying to, understand, what's the cyberpunk genre. Of course, most of us play the pen and paper, and we love, Pondsmith work and all this kind of stuff, right? But it was really tough to calibrate. And I believe that, I believe that was a very organic step to actually set the Orion, the next installment of Cyberpunk there in Boston. But I'm wondering, what do you think that transferring there and actually getting all this new talent can give the entire brand extra? What can you elaborate a little bit?
I mean, there's this interesting story after the release of Cyberpunk that blew up on Reddit at some point, and it's the manhole debacle. So like the manholes, that are covering the roads, right? Like I remember there was this post about the guy saying that there is this immersive braking bug in Cyberpunk, and the bug was about the fact that the covers for manholes for a sewer were the manholes that you use normally in Europe, in Germany, for a pavement. Those are not manholes that you normally cover in America on the streets. And this is basically like showing you the differences, right? Like when you go to America, there's things like hydrants, where they are placed and how they look like. The street lights, the positions of that. The trash bins, right? They're in the front of the house, right? By the street. In Poland, in Europe, you don't see it almost anywhere, right? Like there is so much nuance. Like Dan, when we talk about it, he calls it like the Americana. Like,
Our curbs are different. Our color is different on all of our signs. Everything's just slightly different, and it doesn't break immersion, but it's just that little thing. You're like, oh, maybe this wasn't like, made by people who live here or people who fully understand all of American culture. But yeah, so it's all these weird little small things. I don't think there's like a big overarching thing, but I also think that being in America, it allows us to have those cultural touch points with all the larger American, kind of influence with Hollywood. Obviously, the last one took place, in LA. And so there's just kind of all these cultural touch points and things that we can kind of interact with, whether that's from music or story or just, different parts of America that are interesting to explore.
Yeah, I will actually never forget your curbs, because this is exactly why I broke my ankle in States. I remember I was getting back from the shoot with Keanu, and I was like absolutely sure that the curb size is like this big, as in Poland. So automatically I was going on street, and I slipped my leg because I wasn't expect the half a meter curb, you know what I mean? And I broke my ankle. It was horrible.
They're high, they have storm drains and stuff like that. We don't have this in Poland. We don't have this in Europe. Like it's for us, it's very foreign. Yeah, but it's the little things that kind of, you kind of see. And if you see that, it was made by someone who kind of lives in a different reality, they will kind of automatically or incorporate things that are in your head because they like, this seems like the norm, right? But that's interesting.
Being from Europe is like interesting. Like I sometimes feel like I'm in a camera in some other reality and just observing and taking snapshots. Like I remember us like traveling a couple times to LA, San Francisco when working on Cyberpunk, and then after we sort of did the game, we shipped it. And I did even more traveling now when I'm in the US. I see that we didn't push the envelope far enough in some places. For instance, like let's say the homeless crisis, and so on. Like when I look at it, I'm like, we weren't like far enough. In 77, we thought that we were like dystopian, but we just like touched the surface.
You're like, we had one homeless person in a tent somewhere. Yes. Like, and an American's like, wow, that's like, that's nothing. Like you need like a whole city, so it is very different in some of these areas where even when I played Cyberpunk, you kind of see these things like that, and you're like, wait, someone's like, oh, that's really bad, and you're like, no, that's barely scratching the surface of the differences.
Yeah,
so there's these subtle differences.
Exactly. We thought like, oh yeah, we are being edgy, with all that stuff. And I'm like, my walk to the train every day is more edgy sometimes.
Oh my God, man.
we'll get to your experiences because before that, I also wanted to kind of touch upon what you guys said, where you're creating this nice synergy. You're taking the veterans and the people who were, I would say, the leaders when it comes to everything Cyberpunk and rebuilding the game and building the game and stuff like that. Your experience, Paweł, within this company and the amount of things that you've done is like, I mean, people watching probably know everything about you, which is super amazing because you've also been in the front of the community, talking to the community.
We even joke about it internally. Sasko, everybody knows Sasko. He's just walking down the hall and usually stops with like 20 people. And Sasko also reads everything on Slack, so he always knows what's going on. He's like, hey, on this project, these guys yesterday they just discovered this really cool thing. You should go look into it. We're Sasko, when do you sleep, bro? Like, come on, I really can keep up with my own Slack.
So many tentacles.
Yeah, it's crazy. High energy. But like right in the back, like having this and also having fresh faces come in with a lot of experience. You're known from working at Blizzard, Amazon. That's a lot of experience coming into a different new project, but something familiar. Yet I know you want to grow the project and make it different, make it better, make it bigger. Although I'm always afraid of saying something will be bigger. But that's always kind of the case. It's the CDPR kind of mantra. If whatever we do, we raise the bar. So when combining these two experiences, how do you feel this goes in terms of like building teams, setting something up? Because it feels like you're starting from scratch, but not really, because you have this like
core DNA kind of.
Core DNA, but also a lot of like experience coming in from working on Cyberpunk, but also working on the Witcher titles. It's a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah. I think the cool thing that we're trying to do in Boston is kind of like use the strong base that CDPR has kind of invested in Boston. Like we do have this really strong layer of directors and leads, people like Sasko and Gabe, who've worked well together and really made Cyberpunk what it is today. And so we have this really, really strong base, and we have this really, really strong base of like Red culture, and kind of like the Red 2.0 transition. So we have like this really healthy base now of culture. And so really kind of us new people just kind of, I was joking because I brought the BAFTA home from Poland last time I was here, and it was in my luggage, and people are like, oh, you should be so proud. Your team won a BAFTA. I'm like, I'm proud of my team, but when I look at the BAFTA, it's just like glaring at me being like, you better get one too. So like, I just think like for our team, more the new people, like we're really proud to be working with CDPR, and we're proud to be working with the team that we're working on, but also we feel like we have big shoes to fill, and sometimes kind of like a lot to prove. Like we have to prove that, our team that we build separate from CDPR in Warsaw is strong, and that the investment that the company's making in our team is like proves out, and that we're able to build on the success of Phantom Liberty. So I think it's like scared but humble but also excited. It's a lot of mix of emotions. I'm not sure there's one thing that we're just like, oh, this is exactly what this means to us.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like, to be honest, Dan, because I have a feeling that you are with us way more than 6 months. To be honest, whenever
it's only like 4 months actually.
And that's super interesting, because whenever I listen to you, it seems that we are really, when it comes to the culture, you fit like perfectly, your attitude and stuff. And I was wondering at first, like before we even like set up the studio, I mean, there was this idea, and I was a bit afraid of personally because the culture is kind of everything at the beginning, you know what I mean? And I'm wondering, like, how do you feel and think about, let's say, newcomers kind of clashing with the culture that was brought from the Europe, from headquarters here, and with Sasko and other directors, like being kind of, planted there. What's your opinion on the culture and in general?
Yeah, I mean, so culture is obviously a huge part of making games, and there's a couple of things I think that for me really made me want to work at CD PROJEKT RED. I was the first person when I got reached out to by the recruiting manager, Daniel Gren. He was like, hey, do you want to, do you want to come, do you want to have a conversation? And the first thing was like, if they had contacted me 3 years ago, I would have told them, oh, hell no. Like, because I'd heard the horror stories, the game didn't do well. But, I'd heard about the Red 2.0 transition and how the company changed how it works, and just the massive amount of humility that the company showed towards, delivering something that was worth it, and like really changing the internal culture of how you make games, not only just like the games you make, but also just changing the culture. And I was like, oh, that's something I want to be a part of. Like, I'd love to set that up in North America and bring, I kind of always like to compare, like, it's the sensibilities of a European company, but also a bunch of the culture and maybe some of the edge and experience of American gaming. Because, I've worked, like you said, for a lot of American companies, and I've had a lot of great experiences and a lot of great bosses, and a lot of great mentorship. But there's also some things there that, like, I think like all of us who've been in games a long time, you have some sort of like trauma or PTSD from certain things in your past, and you're just like, I don't want to repeat that. Yeah. And then when I work with like CDPR, it's like they treat people like human beings, and it's like things like, leave, and like how much we pay people, and how we treat people, and how we talk about teams, and how the leaders are, and just there's this underlying humility that I sense about CDPR that I don't think was probably there a couple years ago, but I noticed that companies worked really hard on. My favorite story about interviewing at CDPR and kind of like what embodies the culture as I see it today, I had a meeting with Adam Badowski, who's one of the CEOs and like the creative, head of everything.
How intimidating was that?
Well, it wasn't, because here's the thing. On my interview thing, it just said like Adam Badowski, like head of design or creative director. And I was just like, I've met a lot of creative directors, whatever. So we go into his office and like we talk for like 10 minutes. He asked me some questions, and then we just start talking about kids and family and whatever. And then later I was like, oh, that was a really good interview. I wonder who that guy is. And I Google him and I'm like, what the heck? He's the CEO. He never once said he was the CEO. He didn't talk about it. He didn't act like the CEO. He just we just sat and talked like human beings. And I just was like, so it's marrying that culture plus like the experience of North America. And I think there's a lot of people in North America who want kind of that type of culture, the humility, but also the respect of humans and just kind of how we treat people. And again, I'm the first to say no company is perfect, but it's like how you try to solve those problems and who you're working with is really what's important and makes a place either really good to work or really difficult to work at. And so again, I've only been here a few months, but like that's really been my experience. And like kind of what we're trying to do in Boston is how do we marry those two things together?
Yeah, I'll just add to this, like Dan, like he always like shouts out everyone else, and he always is the one that's cheering for everyone else. But he's really a badass. Like, I mean, we have him and we have a couple other people who joined from other big studios. Like, you can feel it. Like when you're working with someone new, but that person has like 20 years of experience and like 15 ship titles, you're like, okay, you understand each other so much faster. Like all those people understand each other and so on. Dan and others like, Aaron, our art director, just amount of titles they shipped, the games they built, and the wealth of experience they bring, it's insane, because then you are trying to figure out, solutions, and they have like a library of solutions in their head or things they tried out and they know what to do and even who to talk to. Like with Dan, when we recruit, like we just sometimes joke about it, that it's like, okay, we need certain position. We're like, yeah, let's just tap into the talent pool in America because we have contacts in like the biggest companies in America right now, or the markets, or like these specializations, and we're able to reach out and find those people, the ones that we need, just because of how experienced people we brought, to Red. And he's a good guy. It's really like, 'cause I'm working with him every single day.
I like to
much.
be behind the camera usually. Like this is where other people are.
Now I'm working with the guy every single day, actually, and we are very closely collaborating to set up the things in Boston, and it's been going
good.
well.
We've been having a good time. It's been really fun.
Yeah, and it's something that you also mentioned. It's companies that we kind of look up to. Like we looked up to them when we were creating our first games, and the games that because like you said, the history when it comes to the States and the developers that are there and the companies that are there, they have this history, they have this knowledge, they, like you said, ship multiple titles. And for us, it's like, yeah, like we really want to tap into that. Like we really want that experience coming on board so we can make our stuff even better, and also that we can grow as a company. So it totally makes sense. And I like the Adam Badowski story because it was the first thing that I was also surprised when I joined the company, is the fact that any board member is just like a normal human being that you can talk to while getting coffee. And you don't feel like the structure of hierarchy, like, you should be not talking to this guy because he's like way above like your level.
Yeah.
Nothing like that.
Yeah, it's funny because like that story that Dan told, like that was actually my story of interview with Adam. It was just in 2011 for me, but like it was literally the same thing. I had a meeting with him. I knew who he was though.
I should have done more research before, clearly.
I mean, Adam's a legend in a Polish game dev, so I knew who he was. But the thing was like, my interview was scheduled for like, I think 30 or 40 minutes. He sat with me for 4 hours. 4 hours. And we like, it was like 9 at the evening already when we sit together in like one of the rooms and we keep talking about like, we were talking mostly about work and games. And I was like, what is he doing? Even like, how does he even have time? And I was just a designer, right? I was just a quest designer. I wasn't like even any leadership position at the time, right? And it was amazing. It was just like something that made me think like, wow, it just really, and the thing is like, like for me, almost 13 years passed when I'm here. And the thing is that it stayed in my memory so much, that interaction, that he was like just going out of his schedule to just kind of stay with me and talk with me. And in this approach, it really like made me think like, wow, I appreciate this place so much because of that.
Adam's spending time in Boston with us, which I think is another cool investment that the company's making in Boston, which is wonderful, but also not, because he does just want to talk for 4 hours sometimes. I'm like, Adam, we got a shitload of stuff to do. And we're a small team, so I'm like, just, give us a break, bro.
Yeah.
So,
but it's awesome though to have
it is really great.
Adam every day
it's fun.
there. Yeah, because like we can, when we just discuss things about the vision and so on, we can just grab him and just have a conversation.
That's great.
Just bounce things from him. It's easier, rather than having maybe some time difference to Poland and so on.
Yeah, that's actually impressive, because that like he's moving to Boston for like 6 months, right, or 7 months even, something like that. That also shows how much he cares, how much we all care about the studio. And I think you guys doing great. And actually, following on that, why Boston, not LA? Why Boston, not Santa Monica? Why Boston? Is there any like argument behind
Yeah, I
this.
wasn't here when they picked Boston, but I think, I've heard enough people talk about it, and Sasko can probably fill in the details I get wrong. But, I think Boston, one, being on the East Coast, there's as much overlap with Warsaw as possible. Yeah. I think Boston, out of a lot of cities on the East Coast, if we're looking at the East Coast, is probably the most European of the cities. It's got a lot of things going for it. So I think that's one thing. Obviously, also, as you talked about before, the Molasses Flood is there. So we already have a partner studio to kind of that we are actually sharing space with right now. That's been great. So I think kind of all those things fit together to kind of make Boston a great place to put our roots down. I'm selfishly, my dad's family is all from Boston. So and I grew up on the East Coast. So for me, it's like coming home. So it's really wonderful. So yeah.
Exactly. And there's also our Vancouver crew, right? And between Warsaw and Vancouver, there's 9 hours difference. That's a pretty big one, right? But when you were in Boston, that's only 3 hours, right? So from Boston to Vancouver, we covered the whole America, and 3 hours difference is actually nothing. Like in a day-to-day work, you don't really feel it. Like it's so close. So that allows us to, from Boston to Vancouver, to recruit anywhere in North America. That's just a gigantic talent pool, and we cover the whole continent. So that is a huge thing, and we develop those studios and make sure that we have access to as much talent as we can. And because we had our studio on the side of West Coast, then there is Vancouver, then East Coast was sort of like a natural choice. There's also another thing that Boston is a place where you have the best universities in the world. You have Harvard there, you have MIT, numerous other universities there. That also helps out, and most of those people, after they finish their education, most of them goes into Big Farm or some other software companies, because there's not that many big game dev studios. There are some, but not that many AAA players there. So that's also another thing that helps out. So as you can see, it's like a stack of reasons why it was a strategic choice.
And also, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but also Montreal, right? Is the same time zone.
Yes, it is. And
so
Montreal's a huge hub.
It's a huge hub.
Yeah.
It's like
so
over 30 companies, like something like that, right? So, yeah. Okay.
Awesome.
So strategically, we understand now.
Yeah. Now it all comes together.
Exactly.
Right?
It clicks.
Yeah, but it makes sense. It makes sense, especially the part about covering the whole continent and having multiple hubs, and also the time zone wise, it's much easier to connect if you need something. For example, if I need to reach out to Paweł. When my day is ending, yours is starting, kind of, but it's not. There's not that big of a difference.
I wouldn't use Sasko as an example for when days start, but maybe my day starting.
True that.
Maybe my day starting.
Yeah, your day is starting. Yeah. Because Paweł is always, 100% nonstop.
Sure, but
in a good way.
I get your point.
Yeah.
Because we are able to cover much more.
It's
right.
It's really
like when we can work with the Polish team as much as we need to, from Boston, and then transfer all that knowledge, discuss it all with Vancouver team if needed. So that transfer is much quicker.
And then on the really micro level, but this is as a producer, what I think about is Boston is a type of city where when we do hire people, one, we can have people who are remote, but also for people who want to live there, there's a broad range of different living options. If we were to pick New York City or other cities, you have to kind of have that city life. And not everybody wants to live right in the city. And also it's really expensive. So, for maybe your leads and seniors, it's possible. But what about QA or your junior quest designers or whatever? Whereas Boston, if you draw a circle around it, if you live in the heart of the city, any North American city is very expensive in the heart. But there's a lot of surrounding areas. So if you kind of draw a 30 or 40 minute commute around our office, there's a lot of different places. You can live in rural, you can live in a city, you can live in a small town. You kind of have a lot of flexibility, which is really, really important as you think about growing a studio and growing a culture and allowing people to live the life that they want to do. And again, I think that's one of those European sensibilities of we're not just going to put it in the coolest place or where only, our top 10 people can afford to live and everyone else has to drive 2 hours. So I think that's another thing that really makes Boston attractive.
Yeah, also big cities are super intimidating for us Poles and Europeans. I speak from experience. Going down to downtown LA, I'm afraid, but Santa Monica's cool, right? For example, New York, well, that's very intimidating. It's a big city. Everything is feels like the city never sleeps. So it's no, I need something probably quieter, more chill and stuff like that. Yeah.
Let's get back to the Vancouver, because you've mentioned the Vancouver, and I believe, as far as I remember, we've started expansion, right, with Vancouver. like 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. And that was kind of first hub in this side of the world. And then we started Boston. And what's your relationship between Boston and Vancouver? What's the strategy behind this?
Yeah, so Vancouver is a studio that has been going on for longer than I've been here, obviously. But they worked on Phantom Liberty, and did they work on base Cyberpunk as well? Okay, great, cool. Yeah, so they worked on those previous games. I only had heard about Phantom Liberty, and so they're continuing with us on Project Orion. And so we have a lot of engineers out there and a few designers as well. So for us, it's been great to be able to have a talent pool out there and also in Canada, and we can recruit people in Canada to there, which has been awesome. As well as, it gives us more coverage just in terms of hours globally. So that's been really, really awesome. So we're continuing to hire out there. Our job postings that we post are for all of North America. So, we'd love to have more talent on the West Coast in Canada, as well as on the West Coast of America. So Vancouver's been really crucial for us. They're working on some really cool projects that I can't talk about for us for our next project. So we're really excited to be working with them.
That's really cool.
Did I miss anything, Sasko?
No, not much really. Like, you covered it well. So.
Okay.
You got Paweł seal of approval.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. You already talked about your experience with the company, Dan, but I also want to know kind of after, you say it's not fully half a year, right? It's like...
Yeah, it's only like 4 months, I think. Yeah.
How would you rate us overall? Like, you talked
like
about
1 to 10, 1 to 100, A through F. Like
3 out of 7.
Yeah.
Let's give it. Let's go from like A to F.
Okay.
Like the overall experience, and also maybe things that you found weird, peculiar, but cool at the same time. And just a general feeling.
I'll do the rating last because it will keep people hanging.
Good.
Yeah. So I think there are some cultural differences. We always know, like, there's different cultures. But the first week I actually just traveled to Boston. I was working from Austin, Texas, and I just traveled there for a cultural training. Sasko's already laughing and nodding his head. But there's a couple of things that were just like really, really funny in that training that I think I'm glad it was my first week because it really set me up for success. But I was like, Poles think they're like, kind of if you think of it as like a spectrum, Poles are like, they think they're super direct, but they're actually like more towards the medium of directness. And Americans are like super direct. So all the Poles are like, we're so direct. And they took this test and it put them all in the middle. And all the Americans are like way at the other end, like we're 100% direct, and like they answer the questions with directly. And so it was just kind of like this, like, so like when Poles are like, we're really harsh and direct, I'm like, but actually usually there's a lot of, and then like it was relationships was another like vector, and it was like Americans are like, I don't care, just tell me what to do, and all the Poles are like, but I want to tell you a story and know this person and like, and I don't want to just tell you what to do, like I want to explain it. So like when I sit down for meetings, sometimes they're like an hour, and in America I'm like, they could probably be 15 minutes, like go do this. Not in a mean way, but like, hey, like I don't need to give you all the context, but like, hey, we got to solve this problem, we got to do it. But I sit down in a meeting with like our Polish colleagues and like, I just want to explain something to you. And then they tell me this really long story, which is really helpful because I don't have the context. But they tell you something, and then they're like, and I think that we should do this. And it's just like, okay,
We should have started, I think we should do this. And then if someone needs more context, you provide the
these
context.
are just funny things that were like really, really different from our Polish colleagues. And then this is not necessarily related to this, but I always joke I barely speak English. If anybody knows me and reads my Slacks, I have to edit them like 3 times to make them make sense in English. And so
it's like a stream of consciousness.
Yeah, I just go 100%. My wife is watching this right now, being like, "Yes, that's how he writes." I had to edit all his papers. She edits like all of my resumes and all of my cover letters because she's like, "This is garbage." Anyways,
same here. I totally get you.
Yeah. So anyway, so I think another funny thing, and this is not directly related to this, but like that's culturally different, is like English is a difficult language for a lot of people to learn, but Polish is really difficult. So I've started to learn Polish. I'm started my Polish teacher. I won't try to speak any. So I've been taking it for a couple months since I started. But in Poland, they pronounce all of the letters in people's names. And so like, I've had some funny experiences of trying to pronounce people's names. And that one of them actually is why I decided to learn Polish. So there's just like these nuances. And in Poland, I'm sure there's more, but there's only like 20 first names.
How to pronounce Błażej?
No, the one that got me was Łukasz, which in English would just be Lucas.
Yeah.
Anyway, so but the thing is, like in Poland, everybody has like 20 nicknames. So I'm getting, my story does have a point. Is like one of the cultural differences is you'd be like, I was talking to Piotr, and they're like, which of the 500 Piotr's that work at our company were you talking to? And you're like, oh, I guess I can't use the first name. And then you're like trying to pronounce their last name and you're like totally butchering it. And they're like, oh, you mean, and they give you a third name, which is this person's nickname because everyone has a nickname. And then you're like, sure, okay.
I mean, if you have like 20 Pavels, you will have nicknames.
It takes you some
I
time.
think we have 54. Actually.
So it takes you some time to like learn everybody's name because you're like, I learned it. I learned the first name in Slack, and then like I gotta learn the first name and last name, and then I gotta learn the first name, last name, and the nickname, and then I gotta like keep it straight. So I'd probably rate it like a solid B plus, A minus.
Ooh,
that's
high.
It is very high, but I think for me, like, what I was looking for in my career was to build something new in an established company. Like that's really what I like to do. I love to build culture and teams. And I'll be honest, I'm at a video game developer, so they may throw me out, but like making the game is always secondary to me. Like that's why I like partnering with good game design directors because they really care about the game. But like I really care about like people and teams. And so having the opportunity to do that with a company that I feel like kind of wants to do right by people is really important at this stage in my career. So I think that kind of about sums it up, but I'm sure there's a lot more there,
I have that story that Dan told, but from my perspective, we had a meeting together, and it was like one of our first meetings, maybe, when it was just two of us with one other person. I don't even remember to whom we were talking, but meeting was 30 minutes, right? So what we are used to as a Polish managers is you connect with someone. First, you ask them, how's life? Is everything fine? What's your state of mind? Where are you? Maybe something happened. Maybe you've been moving. Maybe, your wife gave a birth. Maybe your dog, something happened to it. Maybe, you got a new cat,
just like.
We know most of those things. So first we just do that check as Polish managers. We are like, okay, to be sure that the person's present and so on. And then we go into storytelling. We explain the context, and then we go into decisions, right? Dan is like, we have 30 minutes of the meeting. So in the first 7 minutes, he went over all the action points, turned off the meeting and left. And I was like, wait, what?
This is exactly what I experienced yesterday with you guys. That was exactly this. So I'm like, I had so much like laugh because, I was listening to you and Paweł was giving all the context and Dan was like checking the time and it was like, we have so many on our plate. And then we finished everything and we still have 20 minutes of our meeting and we're done, which is
efficiency.
Efficiency. It was probably the first meeting Kalemba and Sasko ever finished early.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, because they could both go.
And they're like,
the
we didn't get to tell all the stories, which I do appreciate. But it's just funny. It's just like those cultural differences that really, I think are what make game design and game development awesome. Is like when you get all those people together, that's when you make the best game.
But it sounds like a perfect match, like a compromise between storytelling and like decision making and kind of being more strict on time and stuff.
I think time will tell. I'm always like cautious.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Okay, now to flip the script, Paweł, your experience in the US of A and the transition there. We probably won't tap into your banking system horror stories, but I kind of want to know, how is it? Because I'll say this once again. I kind of like that we're starting anew, starting fresh, but with like previous experience. But it's always exciting to start something from the ground up. You're laying the foundation, and you're doing it also in a new country, a new culture. Everything is new. So how's that been for you?
It feels like just sort of like a startup times of Witcher 2. For me, it's like that kind of level. I think it's like we already have a studio. It even looks fairly nice inside, and we have some people that are experienced. But there's little of us, really, all things considered. But in the same time, you have this like huge entity behind us. Which is like CD PROJEKT RED, the headquarters in Warsaw, with all its resources, people, process, everything that we really need, so that we can build it. So that's kind of how it feels like Witcher 2 times, pretty much when I was starting in the company. That's really how I see it currently. And like for us, it's this like looking into, okay, where are our like blind spots in a way, like big holes, who are we missing as a people right now to just like add them, to the team in those like crucial spots and like kind of construct that team. So that's really how it feels, I would say. Like, I really appreciate our American colleagues who are coming in with like wealth of experience, and also like people that we transferred from Red, from like loads of different like departments, because we do have the pillars, I would say, to construct that, studio and make sure that as Dan mentioned, that DNA is there. It's very present, and we are sort of like trying to align our perspectives as much as we can. I think like it's also a very humbling experience, really, because like we do come here, like in Poland, CD PROJEKT is really a big deal. You know, I was telling Dan and our HR director, Emma, when we were like out a couple days ago, I was telling them story about Obama. Right, like
when he started the story, I thought he was like going to crack a joke or something. And he's like, no, I really haven't.
Yeah, like I remember being in the office and like I think it was Michał Płatkow-Gilewski or Marcin Momot walking around with Witcher 2 copy, asking for a signage. And at that time, you were used to like sign stuff for people. And we asked, hey, for whom is this? You know, signing? And, oh, it's for Obama. And we're like, what the fuck?
Casually.
What are you talking about? Anyway, we had laughs. Couple days later in the news, we see the prime minister giving the game to Obama, right? And that's really how it feels.
Next to the sausage, you know.
You mentioned it. He's like Polish kielbasa and
exactly. There was a couple things, but Witcher was like one of the gifts, you know. And I think it shows, I think, in the best way how proud, you know, Polish people are about CD PROJEKT. And it's a very, like, I would say, humbling experience to just go to America, because it's like you can be like a big fish in a very tiny pond, and then you're going ocean, right? When are whales really like, and you're still that fish, you know? And that's how it feels, you know? It's a very humbling experience. Now, when you have the devs that are like 35 years of experience or 30 that build the games, you know, like you know, like
games you grew up on.
Ultima 7 or something, like, you know, like the deep. Like they are responsible for creating like a whole genres, you know, and they have so much like things that we figured out after like couple games. They're like, oh yeah, of course we've been doing that like for numerous times. Like, sometimes we talk with Dan about like, yeah, we have this idea, you know, to really try, and he's like, yeah, we've been doing that for 10 years, you know, in another place. Or like Aaron, who's very experienced art director. He built, you know, New York for Spider-Man games, right? Like we talk with him and he's like, oh yeah, we've done this, you know, numerous times. We work with that company. I'm like, wow. It's just like,
it's incredible.
It's very, very humbling, you know, like from the experience of a Polish person who's moving from Poland, where CD PROJEKT is really a big deal. Then you go to America and you're like, okay, well, let's start building something actually and try to really show, you know, what we can do in this really, really large pond now. That's one thing. Another thing for me, at least, is like a lot of devs, you know, after maybe 10 years, I don't know, 15 years, they're feeling like, okay, you know, it's a time for a change. You know, I would like to like go in and maybe do some indie game, you know? And I've been here, you know, almost 13 years now. And for me, it's this moment of like, I never felt that I really want to leave the company in any way, but it feels amazing to just stay in the company, but go to and do something new and build something new. You know, it's not like doing the same thing again.
It's evolution. Yeah.
Exactly. It feels like an evolution and feels natural, you know, in a way. So I'm actually really, really thankful to the company that I was given that chance, you know, to just go to US and build something fresh, because I could stay here, which I really wanted. But in the same time, I got this, you know, second like wind, breath of fresh air of just going somewhere else and just seeing like that, you know, our pond wasn't like the whole thing, you know, there's this whole ocean.
Give us one or two funny anecdotes, though. That was like the very company PC, like thumbs up answer. Give us
Exam.
the really.
This is exactly what I
I'm
wanted
not the
to
one
ask you.
leading the podcast, but come on, bro, give us something.
I mean, so my move to America was like really eventful. Like I think everything that could go wrong went wrong, outside of just plane crashing. So that was it. So my plane, I flew to New York. My plane was late for 2 hours. Then I was stuck with all the basically immigrants, you know, waiting for our passports to be checked. And I only had 50 people ahead of me, but we landed around 10 in the evening. In America, that means that only one gate is open and will be checking your passports. It takes 2 hours. I was late. Then I basically had to sleep on the airport. You know, the Polish team was asleep at the given time. So at night, I came over to JetBlue at that time. And I was like, guys, you know, I need to fly to Boston. But they're like, well, but it's night, we are closed already, you need to come at the morning. I come at the morning, they told me the date, the time when they will open. They weren't open at that time, they were open 2 hours later. Eventually I come to the desk and they tell me, you are not our client, we don't have you on the ticket. So I had to convince them, no, I'm actually your client, really, like I'm actually there. Then I had to wake up the Polish team to get my reservation number to actually convince them, no, I actually am there. They found me. Then it turned out that I don't have a luggage on my ticket. So I had my luggage, but they said I got a ticket without luggage. And I was like, no. There's all my life in those 2 cases, actually. So I really need those. I really need those 2 cases. So I convinced them I got another ticket. I went into the gate. I'm already at this point like 30 hours without sleeping. I'm sitting there by the gate at 6 a.m. In New York. I go to the gate. We scan my ticket. It doesn't work. It's rejected.
No.
It's incorrect. Yes. Everyone boarded the plane and we basically called customer support. And thankfully, I remembered the lady that helped me and I was able to tell them who she was, where she worked. They were able to call exactly her. She explained it. I got a ticket and I got to Boston. Then I went to the first bank, got my bank account.
Here we go.
I got my bank account and, it was fairly fine experience, right? It was okay. Got my bank account. Then, I got some of my furniture, which was actually delayed 7 times when they delivered my furniture, which I can tell you later about. But I had to pay for the trash because there was a lot of cardboard from my furniture, from IKEA stuff that they got. So there was a lot of cardboard. And I didn't want to throw it to like communal trash because of, didn't want to put it in my like community. So I just wanted to pay for it. I paid for it. And then the bank immediately reported me for fraud and suspended my account.
Wow.
So I
just wanted to recycle. I mean, come on.
Sorry. It goes unpunished, Sasko.
So I called them and they said, no, we cannot help you on phone. You have to come in person. I came in person. Oh God, it was it took us over an hour because they're using normal customer support lines to actually unhang your account. Anyway, I got my suspended account back. I'm happy. After an hour and a half or so, I'm back home. Next day, I pay for the train, $7 to travel in my train. I'm like, great, my account got reported for fraud again and suspended.
Can't even get a ticket.
Oh my God.
Day, and I had to go to them again. And I asked, is this going to be happening every day?
Every time I pay for something, it's like, should I pay for this now?
So it's very different.
But why?
I think it's just when you're like a Polish citizen, so not American. It's a new account.
You have no money. It's
new behavior. You have no money. You pay for something. It looks suspicious, and the anti-fraud systems catch you.
Yeah.
So and there's been a lot of stories like this. Yeah. Like I ordered my furniture and I was clever. I was thinking, sitting in Poland and thinking, okay, I'm moving at that date. I'll order my IKEA.
You planned everything.
To arrive exactly just after I arrive. So it comes in, I unpack something, maybe mattress, maybe piece of the bed. I put it together. I sleep in the bed first day. Everything's perfect. Until I figured that they actually delayed my delivery and there's no furniture coming. And I'm arriving there and there's nothing. Just completely out of luck. I ordered so much because I like flats in America when you rent them, which is new for us Polish people. They're empty. There's nothing. There's just walls and floor and a ceiling.
Why would I want other people's stuff is the American approach.
Yeah. So there's nothing. So just out of sheer luck, in my delivery, there was my mattress. And the mattress, they didn't have it in the original warehouse. So they sent it from a second warehouse. So literally there was another car with mattress and single pieces of equipment that I couldn't put together because the other parts were not delivered. But they delivered that mattress. So I was able to sleep on a mattress on the floor for a month. That was my first experience. I was like, yes, back to student times.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted.
That's
back
what
to
I
my
want to say.
bachelor's
All you
life.
need is a chair and a big flat screen, and you are the
I didn't have a
meme.
flat screen or a chair. But I had the bed. So I have many stories like this.
Perfect.
Is it better now? After a few months, you again.
Yeah, I got my furniture. My account is not getting suspended anymore. Though my Polish bank has suspended it. When I paid for my flight here to Warsaw, they were like, suspicious behavior, suspended my because I was at the time in Scotland when I made the operation. I used Polish card to pay for a flight from America to Warsaw. Anyway, complex,
suspicious.
but they were like, something's wrong. No,
All I'm hearing, if there are any banks who can help out Sasko,
Yeah, hit them up.
Exactly.
Hit them up.
Leave your comments.
Your ambassador. Yes. So nowadays it's Polish banks that got in my ass.
Oh, that's funny.
One more thing for you, Paweł. You're switching roles like crazy now. You're moving to a position that is associate game director, if I'm not mistaken, and that's different than someone working primarily on Quest, and of course also being in the director seat. But how is this like transition for you?
It's a great question. I mean, so this requires a bit of an explanation. So after in Cyberpunk, I became a quest director. And as you said, I was like just handling quests. But then later on Phantom Liberty, I actually got also a cinematic department and open world department. So in a way, it was like a sandbox a training, for me, just sitting there almost like a kid, trying to learn, how to do it in a way that every department feels treated the same way. They feel they're respected. They don't feel that I'm only focused on quests and nothing else. That there's also open world, there's also cinematic departments that are really important for me. So that period of 2.5 years, 3 years when we work on Phantom Liberty, that was a great training ground for me to like understand, how to scale it up. And at that time I had 64 employees already that were like through the leads, of course, reporting to me. So I had to like learn how to scale my process to many people. So it's great training. So now it's completely different because in a way, like everything that happens in a game is I'm somewhat responsible for,
and involved in the
and
process.
of course, I treat myself more of a shadow of a Gabe, really, because he's the game director. I'm just an associate. But in the same time, we have Dan, who's an executive producer. So those two guys, like, they like hold the most important things. But then in the same time, I'm kind of like feeling like I'm responsible for everything in the same time because it's scaled up. So I'm trying to keep my eyes open. It really helps the fact that we are just smaller team right now because we are in early stages of production. So I can actually like sort of like learn, like how to scale up and really, understand how to talk to, even though I did that in the past many times, to programmers, to gameplay designers, engineers, to audio, right? Like how to really just be sort of a support for everyone rather just be focused on like narrative and just quests and nothing else. And to be honest, it's been, I really enjoy it. But it was an experience when I was like, at first I was lost. I was talking with Gabe a bit about this and I was like telling him, man, it's like, I really appreciate this because like I like it. But in the same time, I'm kind of feeling that I'm doing everything but nothing. It just feels like
welcome to leadership. Everything and nothing.
Yeah,
it's different. Yeah,
but you probably also have the same experience.
Yeah,
like
so I'm listening to Paweł and I'm like, oh my god, I'm so thankful for him actually to speak up, and because exactly this is how I felt for the first year of actually joining, like getting a new role, because it is still a huge challenge, to actually reframe, to actually take this different perspective on things and kind of course, apply all the lessons learned and your, let's say, managerial skill, your expertise, in my case, visual language, kind of a narrative visual language, cinematics, animation, some tech, but in Paweł's case, Quest. So,
both of your things are very tangible. Quests, animation, you deliver things. Here you're laying the groundwork, you're building something, you're talking about concepts, about ideas, and it's not as tangible, right? So you feel like we're setting stuff up, but am I really doing something? Because I don't see like, the products, let's say, but it is more because you're responsible for creating something and laying the foundation for something, which is huge if you think about.
I think that's one of the hardest things about leadership is you lose like the tangibility of what you're doing. You're like, you set a course and you're like, well, I hope we get there in a couple months. But I always kind of use the boat analogy. When you're like really junior, you're maybe like on a jet ski, you just turn it all over the place. Like everything you do has impact. And then you get upgraded and maybe you're like on a fishing boat, But by the time you're like a director, whatever, you're like the captain of a cruise ship and you're like, I think we should go over there, but I have no idea what's happening on deck 50. I just told them to do this, but I don't know. And maybe we'll end up over there and maybe the food's warm and maybe it's cold. I don't really know. But getting back to Sasko as an associate game director, what I think has been really cool to see is him and Gabe's relationship. Gabe is an insanely talented director and like has great vision in things. And it's great to see how Sasko like complements that. And I think that's one of the really hard things to do in any sort of role where you're working really closely with somebody is like, how do you complement that person so that they can be successful? What I think is awesome, Sasko is like always taking notes, super detail oriented, is on top of everything and like always following up on things. And that really allows Gabe to kind of like focus on kind of like that higher level creative vision. So it's really cool when you see those things work together and you're like, oh, that's how that's supposed to work. So it's for me who's new, it's been really cool because sometimes you see those and it's like, not a great relationship, or they're kind of both fighting for like creative vision. But it's really cool to see how you guys work together. So I'm super impressed.
I mean, my approach is always like I try to be like Bruce Lee. I try to be like water. So I'm like, if I see that someone's strengths are like this, I'm not gonna fight with them. I'm more like, okay, how I can complement you, in a ways that, and how I can be that water. And Gabe has like numerous like very clear strengths when you work with him. So it's like super obvious for me where I don't have to help him or be there because it would just be pointless in a way. And again, as Dan said, like it would just create a feeling that we are fighting for something, which is like stupid because we have the same goal. So I'm not gonna do that. I will be like water, and I will be like, okay, what do you need, from me in this moment? And I'm gonna do whatever is needed. Because I have this like mindset of I'm a servant. No matter what it is, I'm gonna do it. You know?
But you are like a master of adaptation for me. Like it's like you always understand what's the goal, and you kind of try to contribute the best possible way to it, which is,
and also
let's
being
say,
very humble, which I think is like from this discussion that we had today, like humble is the thing that kind of always pops up to my mind when it comes to CDPR. Like I've seen it from the beginnings until now. Like we're always humble and also willing to learn and also willing to work with other people and understand them and also see where they're coming from. And not being like you said, like opposed to stuff. Instead of just, sometimes if you see someone is good at something, you pave the way for them, or you help them out, or you compliment them, support them, just to go in that direction because it will benefit us as a whole, as a company.
And they will surprise you really. Like, I mean, there's like, for instance, Sarah Grimmer, she's an acting quest lead now in Boston, and like, she was one of the people that we hired like over 10 years ago. And just like seeing her grow, from just being a person, a designer who did the communities, and then later, became like a quest designer. And she got like a first quest from me when I became a quest lead on Hearts of Stone and then Blood and Wine. And I saw her like grow and so on. And now, just because like I'm trying to be like exactly like water, like I just see what she needs and just like give her a bit, and that's it. And it's mind-blowing and surprising. Really cool. Like when you can see like that person being like, wow. It's like I've never kind of like expected that to happen like this, like that all of those things now and you can do it like this. And I'm like, I wouldn't be able to do it like that well. Like I look at it, I'm like, I'm so grateful that I actually didn't try to like tell you exactly how to do it, or because you just do it better. Like at this point, that's really the reality. And if you just empower the people and like try to be just this support, Dan often talks about it, about being a cheerleader, and he's great in that. And we are trying to teach the team also about this, like just be the cheerleader, like support others, show them, appreciate what they do. And so it does so much. Really, it does so much.
It's like kind of responsible for setting the very healthy environment for people to grow, right? Yeah. And this is actually about that. It's like the example with Sarah is exactly this for me. So
it's just building others up. Exactly. And just kind of giving them the space and also like telling them so they feel that they're appreciated and that whatever they're doing is good. And you're like, yeah, you go girl, you go boy, you do it. You do your thing, right?
Yeah, and I think that's like one of the key like signs of a good leader. I think we've all had bad bosses, and that toxicity, they're afraid of you. Or like they're afraid of what you're doing, or you get afraid as a boss sometimes. And it's something that even as leaders you have to fight against. I think that's so important, like being excited for other people's success and like encouraging them. And then like you said, Sasko, being like, well, they're better than me now. And being like, that's awesome. Like I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really, really key thing of leaders, and like seeing people go be successful in their career, whether it's with us or somewhere else, and being like, oh my gosh, look at all they've achieved. Like, and continuing to just be excited for them is, I think, just super crucial in those leadership positions. And it's cool to see you do it with Sarah and others. So
yeah, Sarah is a legend already in the studio. Like everybody knows her and knows that she can like dish out incredible stuff.
Do they all know she drives a Mustang?
Oh, I didn't know that fact.
Really?
She's already become an American.
Becoming more and more American.
More American.
American muscle.
She went straight for American muscle. I was like, you're German. Don't you want a German car? She's like, nah, American muscle. I'm in America.
Respect.
Yeah.
So
in regards of like training people and so on, just wanted to add one more thought, because like it's super important to me. I'm a psychologist and I'm a development psychologist. So like for me, it's like one of my most favorite topics is the thing that, like when you get someone new, you can see some promise in them, but they struggle, and it does not seem to be working for like a long time. And then there is this growth happening, and it's just very slow. And it is happening when you compare them maybe to the way they've been a year ago, 2 years ago. You can see this growth, but in a way you can be like as a manager, as a lead, when you have someone new, you can maybe like lose hope at some point and be like, it's been so hard already, so many years, and I can see you grow, but it's so slow. And then there is this moment when you see it finally came together, and you're like, wow, like since couple months or weeks, you are like a different human. And then there's this breakthrough moment when everything came together, when like sort of that knowledge, that skill, that behavior, the attitude, everything like solidified, and they became like just better, like entered new level in a way. It's like getting an XP, like slowly and building it up. And I think like as a manager, especially like high level managers, it's like, I think it's kind of, it's difficult sometimes to be, look into people and keep investing, and give them that time, sometimes it really takes many years. Like I've seen so many amazing people here in Red, who took years to grow. Really, it took years. Like there are some that are doing insane progress, like insane, like just the development is incredible, and you're looking at it and it's just amazing to see. But in most cases, most of us is actually very similar. It's like I often like this is what psychology teaches us. Even though we all think like we are individuals, all of us is different. The thing is like most of us really walk the same path.
There's some same patterns, like
they're literally same patterns.
Yeah, it's also the fact of like calibrating. You calibrate, like when you come into a company and you start working within teams, you're shifting slowly your mindset and also how you interact with others, how you do things. But it's like, it's fine tuning, it's calibrating. But when you hit the right spot, that is when you become really part of the thing, or it is something that unlocks your potential because you fully calibrated to, let's say, this direction.
Yeah.
And then it just goes.
There's one story I want to tell. Like, there's one person in our company. I won't call him out in a name, but it's a very talented manager right now, and I'm really proud of the guy. And I remember, like at the time, we had like a feedback meeting because he was my direct report. We sat together, and my feedback meeting was supposed to be an hour, and it took me 8 hours.
Wow!
I came in. And
how much of that was story, though, Sasko? I'm just asking.
7 hours of story.
Already. How much was it? Like,
And the thing was that during the feedback meeting, I realized that I'm not getting to that person. We are not on the same page at all. But I saw that it's working. I just saw that I just need more time. So I was like, I moved my meetings and I was like, let's continue this. And we kept talking. And after a couple hours, we were closer. And when I was done, and I missed all my 3 trains that I had to take. But the thing was that after this 8 hours, we were on the same page. And he keeps remembering that story. And I told him that basically after like 6 hours, he told me like, maybe we should just leave it and I'm done. I don't think it's going anywhere. And I told him, I refuse to give up on you. I refuse to give up. And he keeps telling me that story and remembering that. And I'm so proud of the guy. And it was like really just required me to be like, okay, I'm not letting this.
Get to the bone, right?
Yeah, let's just get to the bone and like show him that there's this like acceptance on my side. There's this love that I'm really like trying to help him as much as I can. But there are things that we have to go through together because it's not going to work otherwise. Yeah. And it was a tough conversation for like a whole day, and I had to move my meetings, all of it, but it was worth it. And that person's still with us, amazing manager, grows all the time, and I'm so happy that I did that. And he keeps telling that story to younger employees and so on, because like it shows like that you can do that. It maybe is a bit extreme. I normally don't have 8 hour long feedback meetings, but it just shows that sometimes you just really have to just do what it takes, and for some people, yeah, you need to be maybe a bit extreme, to really get them to that.
But I think
right
you're hitting on
place.
something that's really important about like being a more senior manager is like you have to give the tough feedback and you have to actually tell people. You can't just assume that they know or assume that that's the peak of what they can do. And I think a lot of times either we avoid those tough conversations or we don't, or we have them where we're like, I'm going to change the reporting structure so that this person reports to someone else, let them deal with it, instead of like taking the hard things. And I think a lot of times it's like my general belief, and when it comes to like, especially in game dev, because I think most people work in game dev love being game development. We're all here because we love games, and most of us, it was a childhood dream to be in game dev, is like those people want to succeed. They just like, a lot of times you don't know what you don't know. And I've had so many bosses along the way for me that have had maybe not 8-hour meetings, so I probably could have used them because early in my career, I was like a bull in a china shop. I was just like, you think it's bad now with how like boom, boom, boom I am. I'm like, I've been in my career, like I feel so bad for my early, but I had some great managers. I'll actually name them, like Stephen Flannery was who's now at WB Games. Dan Elgren and was an amazing leader. Jason Shays, they were at Blizzard, and then Melissa Meyer. They all took time with me, and I have a feeling if they do see this, they'll be like, I can't believe he's achieved so much. We thought he would wash out. Just like keep. But to your point, like you just keep working at it. You don't know what you don't know, and then when you're really young, I think one of the things about more senior leaders that you hope for is more self-awareness. We know what our weaknesses are. But you need to give that feedback. And I have an example like you. Like this week, it was a much smaller feedback session. It was like a 10-minute or 15-minute, just like, hey, could you change this thing? And what I loved about it was like that person was also a leader. And it was really cool to see the leadership. That person immediately was like, I hear you, I'm going to work on it. And then they did the thing. And even in the thing, they're like, hey, this person, Dan gave me feedback on this specific thing. And so I'm doing it. And I just thought it was like, for me, that was just like, whoa, that's like I'm not sure I'm that mature. Like if someone gave me feedback, I'd probably wait a day and then do the thing, but I wouldn't tell anybody that like he told me to do it. And I just felt like, wow, that's like, it was such an amazing way to handle feedback, was to just be like self-own it. And it was in a very public channel with other people. And I was just like, that's really, really cool. So, yeah, it's your point, like being a leader, don't avoid feedback, but also most of us leaders, we've gotten some really rough feedback in our careers. And I think most of us have had to like grind it out. And so I think that people forget that like, it's not just about giving feedback, it's about like that humility to receive that feedback.
The humility is
how much you care about the person.
And that we've probably received some of the harshest feedback. Like it's you got to keep going when you get the harsh feedback and be like, yep, I do need to change. I do need to get better.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. Actually, I would actually talk with you guys like forever, to be honest. But what's really great, because we covered so many topics about the leadership, engagement. You guys are so engaged and you care so much about the Boston studio. I have no doubts that Orion will be bloody amazing. But getting back to the game itself, like what are your plans regarding the of course
without details,
details, right? Without details. But
please tell us about the game. Details.
Kind of a little bit before we get to the plans, I would kind of want to say, like, let's say Cyberpunk for you guys. What does Cyberpunk mean for you, and what does it mean for the future of Cyberpunk?
It probably has really different things, because I just consume Cyberpunk as a consumer.
But we always want your point of view.
Well, my
also,
point of view, I always joke, is like really, I feel like really shallow. Like I bought it day one because I'm a huge Cyberpunk fan. Like one of the first games I ever played was Deus Ex. Like it was the first, like one of the first RPGs where you could pick a different ending. I have a really funny Warren Spector story for another time. But like you could pick a different ending, and like one of my dreams is to get the Adam Hansen like as a sleeve, like get his arm, tattooed.
I would recommend this.
My wife will let me. Anyways, I would love to do that. But yeah, so like I've always loved that genre, and like so for me, like I'm not much of a marketing hype person, but I was like, oh, I really want to play this game. Like I'll be honest, sorry, Kalemba, I'm like not much of a Witcher fan. Like I don't play a lot of single player story driven games.
I also
like,
came for Cyberpunk.
Yeah,
to this company,
exactly.
honestly.
I mostly play like online shooter MMO like games. Like that's really more where. But anyways, I bought it day one. I downloaded it day one, and I think and I'm a father with kids and a wife who I care about, and I try to balance. But I think I beat the game in like 3 days. Like I just was like, I played it straight, and then I was like, dude, this game. I was like, this game is awesome, and I went online, and it was getting like just burned to the ground. And I was like, did we play the same game? Like, and again, when I play games, I'm very rarely I'm very emotionally satisfied. But I felt like the storytelling, like it was a very emotionally satisfying game for me. Pan Am, we rode off into the sunset. Yes.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Is there any other ending? Actually, by mistake, I picked the first. This is another funny story. I was playing the game, and then Johnny Silverhand's talking to you in the chair, and I did the ending where you end it all. I guess I don't know what the politically correct way to say it is. And I was like, wait, that's not what I wanted. I wanted the happy one with Pan Am. Like, how did I end up here? So I immediately reloaded.
That's life, man. That's life.
I immediately reloaded my save.
We back.
And I was like, we're back. Ignore that ever happened. Go. Anyway. So I had a wonderful Cyberpunk experience, and I just love the kind of what it is. And I think that for me to kind of get more on like the Cyberpunk as a whole is like, I think the really cool thing about Cyberpunk and the dystopian future that it has is like, there's so much relevance to today of like mega corporations, of people on the fringes, of, people just being exploited resources, of the wealth gap, of all these things. And I think that Cyberpunk allows us to tell these stories in these ways where it's like, look, like at the heart of it, there's always relationships and people, but we're in a really broken world. And that like, we can call out some of these things and kind of, I think games have this way of like not giving you answers, but asking questions of like, what do you think about this? That there's like this huge wealth gap. What do you think that like megacorps are going to run the world? What do you think about exploiting your
all
body?
The time, right?
Yeah, it makes you think. So I think that's what's really cool. And I think with Orion, and there's so many other different opportunities that we can take in the universe. That I think for me, that's what really Cyberpunk is about, is like exploring those themes, but in a very poignant way. And so for me, like I love the world, and I think that's what we're going to try to do with Project Orion, is really kind of like continue to lean into that and continue to kind of like say, okay, well, what is it today and what does it look like in a couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the answer is completely different. I mean, I've been growing in this company, right? Like, I joined as a designer who already had a couple of years of experience. I already shipped a couple of games, and I was growing here with this company. And then The Witcher 3, in a way, was a dream. The fact that I worked on that game, then the expansions, I was so happy, so hyped, and then. Change to the Cyberpunk at the beginning was quite difficult to me. It was a different IP. Like, I really loved Witcher. And then slowly, I get to learn, everything about Cyberpunk. I get to really love it. I get to really go into the weeds of the things, really deep down, what it is about, as Dan was talking about. And as a person, I'm really motivated by growth. That's like the most like exciting things for me, honestly. And like for me, what I really wanted for us as a company, for me as a person, is just growth, And in a way, when we've been building Cyberpunk, I felt that we are doing that. There's so many new things that we are doing, different, types of storytelling, first-person perspective. It's a shooter. Now we have cars, just so many things were so different from Witcher. And I felt like there's so much growth happening, even though it was tough as hell to make this game. And then the release, was really heartbreaking, And in a way, like, I felt that it was like, in a way, my own personal failure, of that I failed in a way to grow in a way I wanted. And it really it really made me think of like, okay, I really need to like be better, like rethink what I'm doing, how I'm doing this. And then, put it in work and be like, okay, and the thing is that, a lot of people, like, when there's, tough situations and so on, a lot of people make a decisions of like, no, I'm leaving, I'm going somewhere else. I'm going to start something else. One of the most powerful motivations that kept me here was because it was tough. Because I felt it's hard.
It's a challenge.
And it was a challenge. And I felt it's like the team needed me. And I felt it was hard for everyone. And I felt like, okay, I want to be here because it was hard. Not because it was easy, but because it was hard. Because like I felt like this growth is happening. It hurts like hell. It really hurts like hell. Everything, like going to social media, seeing like everything I said or did, before the release, memed to the death, getting death threats, all of that stuff. It really, really did hurt. But I felt that growth is happening, and then put all that work into the patches and then Phantom Liberty, and have that moment of like, yeah, I'm gonna do my absolute best to really grow together with everyone, with the whole company, and like really be better, and try and try and try. Because like, in a way, I think like me personally, I think like I felt after Witcher 3 that I'm better than I've been. I think that this is how I felt as a person. And the fact that like Cyberpunk was such a crushing experience, I was like, okay, now I know where's my place, in a way. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna grind my way back where I want to be. And with the theme, with the Phantom Liberty crew, we got it back there. So that's my relationship with Cyberpunk. It's like I really, really appreciate it for like kind of like making me grounded and understanding of like, okay, this is maybe who you are and this is what you're worth, really. And you have to like keep your feet on the ground and be thinking of, what you can actually do, rather than have some, I don't know, dreams about yourself or, picture that is not realistic at all. So now with Orion, it's like, I want to keep doing that and really have all that, experience. And we sometimes with Dan, we talk about like really deep scars that were left out. And I think like those are not wounds anymore. I think those are scars. But in a way, I'm one of those people that when they're scarred, they kind of like tattoo, things around those scars and cherish those scars.
They tell a story.
And I kind of am like this, like I do embrace those scars, and I'm more like, okay, this is not something to hide and cover with a tattoo, but rather decorate around it and be like, I'm proud of those scars, And now, that's why, when the Cyberpunk release happened and so on, I went live and I was streaming for people, even though I knew how, like, I was riding on the edge, knowing how difficult it's going to be, just being there with the community, feeling, how they felt, even though they felt left out in a way, so many of them, especially those that loved the game. So just to create that space for them to be there together. But like, treat those scars as something that's really more like a thing that I cherish and is really dear to me. And I'll probably really remember it till the end of my days, how it went with Cyberpunk. And I really feel that, if you didn't have a failure in your career, you just haven't been doing it long enough. That's really
very true.
That's really what it is. And if it's a sport, if it's a career, anything that you're doing, if you just didn't have a failure, you haven't been doing long enough.
If you just win all the time, it's also, that means it's either too easy, or you're not putting in the correct work, or you're not trying to kind of push the boundaries of what can be new, exciting, different. Like you said, Cyberpunk was a big lesson for us, but also it was something that we didn't know. It was a big leap. It was a idea that came from all of us loving the pen and paper. And to take it and actually make something of it, like we had to like stumble in order to get back on our feet. But it was a process and it wasn't easy. But also what you did, with talking with the community, doing streams and stuff like that, was building this bridge and relationship, which was very important for people that you said like felt that maybe they're a little bit left out. But you were there to kind of, show a helping hand and also say like, hey, we're going through this together and let's talk about it, which is a good platform to interact with the community and talk with people. So
and that's what I love about game development is like in a lot of other industries, yeah, people work hard and they put their heart and soul into their job. I'm not saying they don't. But like in game dev, it's like you can just see like when developers have a game that's a bomb, like it just hurts on a really deep level, and you wear those scars and you're just like, well, that really sucks. But I think it's, again, to your point, like, do we say, oh, we want to keep learning and do better, or just like, well, tough shit, like that's the end of that,
Yeah, let's move on to something
Let's
different.
move on to something else. But I think that's like why I love game dev, is just that so much passion. Like we're all here because we love games, we want to make the best games possible. And that doesn't mean that we're perfect, we make mistakes. And there's also the realities of the world of just like, finances and teams and whatever processes, but it's like grinding away at it and getting better over time, I think has brought the industry in terms of like quality of games now. I'm sure everyone here at the table has like 20 or 30 Steam games they haven't played, or like
yeah,
a stack of CDs, and they're all like
shameless, right?
Yeah, shameless,
Exactly.
and they're all like, and it's like, and they're all like award-winning games. Like, but I think that's awesome because like we started somewhere else and people have kept working away at failure and trying things, and just like there's the passion. And that's what I love about the industry is like the passion to make it better and better and better and better.
And you like to see it, like once you're part of the industry, you like to see people succeed. And when you see like other studios fail, or maybe some games like bomb, like you said, it's tough because you know, you feel what they're going through, like because you see the process, you're in the whole
you
thing.
Sympathize,
so
like
it's,
from the get-go.
it's sympathized. It's very tangible. And sometimes I feel that, you know, a lot of people who are not part of this industry, they think that making games is like super easy, and it's like you don't see the people kind of behind it, but it's like huge teams. It's very passionate people, like you said, and they take it very seriously because it's like, you know, you treat it as you failed in some sense. And then sometimes, you know, there's information that comes in from above, like, you know, we're pretty much dropping this. We're moving on to something else. We're like, no, I want to stay. I want to do this. I want to make it good. I want to give people what we promised in the beginning. And I'm happy that we did that because people have been calling it a redemption arc. We were very hesitant to call it a redemption arc ourselves because we wanted others just to say it for us. And when it happened, I saw the relief in the people in the studio. And I remember when we had the launch party for Phantom Liberty, everybody was happy. Like you see, there was a spring in their step. You see that they're getting like positive stuff going, and we still celebrate things. We celebrate that we're getting overwhelming positive reviews on Steam and stuff like that. And this gives people energy. It's like you know, you're Goku and you're building the spirit bomb. All the positivity, it goes straight into you.
Yeah, but you have to earn it, right?
You gotta earn it.
I like the concept of growth that Paweł just shared because, you know, generally it's also the way how you manage the pressure. Pressure as a concept is actually pretty actually interesting because pressure, like in physics, right? It break pipes or it make diamonds. So, you know, it's how to manage this growth, how to manage the pressure, how to take this lesson. And following on that, people ask us pretty often about some book recommendations or anything. And you've shared some concepts on healthy leadership or, let's say, the growth. Do you have something that you could share with anyone?
I have like so many.
Give one.
I have a few, but go for it.
One book.
Okay, I think like probably that would be The Mastery by Robert Greene, I think. So it's a book about that analyzes loads of different biographies of composers, musicians, athletes, artists, people who did have tremendous success in their life and how they get there, you know, and I absolutely love it. There's like, you know, stories about Chopin. There's stories about scientists there. When they go into detail of like how do you achieve mastery. I think it's a book that I read a couple times. I also listened to it on audiobook. I think that's probably the best one that I could recommend when it comes to like building mindset and understanding, you know, how really mastery is achieved. And it's really about the growth. It's really about that concept.
It's the process.
Nice.
I love the process. People
I love
like
the book,
always
actually.
people always think about like in the end, it's like running a marathon. Like running the marathon is easy. The preparation, the long trainings, the long runs, all that stuff.
It's like in the project. Like planning is so important because then you only execute. Only, but still.
The process is more important. And that's why people thrive in the part of enjoying the process, enjoying the grind. Going back to the, you know, blackboard and, you know, reinventing something or changing something or building stuff from the ground up. That is what's exciting. Dan,
my book recommendation is slightly different, but it's called The First 90 Days. And it's like this book that I read every time I get promoted or a new job or I'm starting a new project. I read it all the time. It's a small little read, but essentially just kind of lays out this roadmap of like how in a new role or a new job or new situation do you approach the problem.
That's nice. I haven't heard of that.
And it kind of provides you like a lot of examples, but also a lot of like really actionable, tangible things of like how to like adapt. And a lot of what you said about like, you know, being water, essentially, like that's kind of the thing is like, hey, your old thing in a new job or in a new role, old ways don't always scale. Just because you were a senior and now you're a lead, just because you were an associate and now you're a mid, or whatever the case is, or because you were in pharma and now you're in tech, or because you're in tech and now you're in games, like the old approaches won't work, whether that's due to culture or changes in expectations and whatever. And it kind of just always feels like it sets you up for success in a new position. And anytime you're changing in a new position, I think we talked about this before, you're just kind of like scared, a little shitless. You're just kind of like, and sometimes it's the first year. And so for me, this book, you know, really And I swear my dad sends it to me like every year too. Like he's like, I got you this book. I don't know if you read it. I'm like, Dad, I already have like 5 copies. But I do love the book. And I appreciate my dad sending the copies of the book. But yeah, it really helps you kind of like get off on the right foot and have some sort of confidence that like you kind of know how to like approach things in a new role. And it gives you kind of like a little bit of like, you can put the blinders on and just kind of work through a process and feel like, okay, I'm making progress. It doesn't guarantee success, but it helps me know, oh, I tried this, that didn't work. Okay, what's something else to try? Where sometimes you try something in a new role or you do something and you're like, why did that not work? I have no context for why this isn't working. Then you got to go ask somebody, be like, Sasko, why are we, talking for 15 minutes at the beginning of every meeting or whatever, like the case is. But like this book kind of helps you kind of work through those things quickly and not take it so personally. Because I think a lot of times when we start a new role or something changes, anytime something goes wrong, we're like, oh crap. I've been over promoted or I took the wrong job, and you just take it so deeply. And this just kind of helps you just be like, okay, well, let's just work through this process. So that's my book recommendation.
Awesome.
Incredible.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's the episode, man.
Yeah.
I think that's the episode.
Guys, thanks a lot.
Of course.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
It's
Very inspirational.
Very inspirational, and also giving us a behind the scenes of what's happening in the Boston studio. Yeah, and of course, if you want to join the guys, go to our career page. Everything's there. Easy. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Answer Podcast, but we won't end like we always do because we have some questions from our lovely podcast community. First one is from Diana Catalans. I hope I said that correct. When deciding on the plot of a quest, do you take any inspirations from movies or series? And Sebastian, I'll throw that to you.
Yeah, thanks. That's a very great question, Diana. We always do. Like generally, this is what we do. And I believe it's not an extreme approach. I believe like if you want to create the content, create a quest that has its own kind of unique identity, and you want the player in this case to really go into and relate with the story and emotions there, you should find something, an inspiration that actually will resonate with audience. And of course, there's this concept that in the entertainment industry, like everything is remix. We are humans, and we are emotional, and we want to create these emotions. We want people to care. So there are like, you have for sure, Diana, you have your favorite movies that you can sometimes, smell or see hints, glimpses of it in our games too. And probably it's because we try to get inspired by the content that inspires us too.
Yeah, we do it through Easter eggs. We do it through multiple things, similarities, drawing from different things.
Yeah.
Even sometimes small visual aspects or even a sticker on a car can tell you a lot of things. But you need that because we as humans, like you said, we love to relate to things.
Exactly.
And if it's relatable, it makes us even more immersive.
Then you care. Then you care. Yeah. And we most often start from genres, and you simply deconstruct things, go deeper, find depth, inspiration, and then we kind of think about how we can look at this from the different perspective and apply it on our medium.
All right. Question number 2. We have 3 in total. This one's by Ash Phillips, and she asked about our chairs. What's up with these custom chairs? She, I know, has a Cyberpunk chair, like the yellow one.
Yeah.
But these are special.
These are special, and there are only 4 AnsweRED chairs in the world.
Yes.
And thank you, Secret Lab, for collabs, right?
Exactly. They showcase all our titles. We have Edge Runners, we have Gwent, we have Cyberpunk, and The Witcher, of course, and the big bird logo in the middle. Check out Secret Lab. Thankfully, they were able to provide this. And we also have skins for chairs, and we also have special Cyberpunk-themed and Witcher-themed chairs. I also have a Witcher chair at home, which I love. And it's the same thing, but the design is totally different. And we also love these chairs. And last one, we kind of had this in the episode, but I also wanted your take on it. From Jakub Starzec, we had a question a long time ago about book recommendations from us.
Oh, yeah, we could go forever for sure. But I was actually inspired by Paweł Sasko today. But he mentioned great book, and I also recommending it. It's really great, by Robert Greene, called Mastery. But there's one book I'm reading right now, and I'm trying to read all the time as some kind of a personal growth books or leadership books, but the one I read right now, it's really amazing, and the title is Grit by Angela Duckworth. It's actually about the passion and resilience behind the success, and I believe resilience is crucial when it comes to growth. So yeah, I really recommending this book. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I'm actually gonna play off of you, and I'm gonna say "Can't Hurt Me" by David Goggins.
It's a good one.
I love Goggins. It's also about grit, perseverance, going for the goal, not giving up, but also
discipline,
having this discipline, this hardcore discipline, and looking in the mirror, telling yourself you're not good enough, you better do better. I know he's an acquired taste, but it also falls into the part of grit and perseverance.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you for your questions. If you have more, don't forget to leave them in the comments on YouTube. Don't forget to rate the podcast specifically on Spotify, but also on Apple. Wherever you're enjoying it, it helps us a lot. And we can keep on doing this for you guys. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.